Hey everyone, here to talk about the 3.8 patch. Unfortunately, there's no big content being added, but there's a lot of little features, a lot of back-end stuff that's been worked on, and not all of it's player-facing, but I wanted to give a rundown of all the things that are new. And first I thought I'd recap some of the things that happened between 3.4 and current patch 3.8. So the first thing that I would mention is that I improved the lockpick mouse controls. As you can see, you can just zip over and it goes to each one, and you can just click anywhere you want, and that gives you the controls of the minigame. And it should feel a lot smoother. The other major fix has to do with loading the game, which is kind of a big deal because when you press this, it would go to delete by default before, but now it goes to load. You see how it went to load there? So that was a big deal. Caused some problems in one of the play tests. And other than that, there's a lot of small fixes that are not terribly interesting to go over. And there was no 3.7, so don't worry about that. So let's move on to something more interesting, which is 3.8 itself. Alright, so a big addition is something that was inspired by my replay of Fallout recently, was I decided to add a bunch of alt fires to basically every weapon in the game. And you can see some other UI changes here where these long names can now fit. There's an XP meter. I forget if I did this before, but I switched equip and inventory, and I called this supplies now. And this UI is also adjusted to not have any wasted information in it now. And this, you can see, there's a lot of info. There's the secondary fire over here. And we can unlock that by equipping a program. Now you see we have all these new things that we can do. And you can see it for every weapon. This one's grayed out because it's a melee weapon. And I think this stuff is pretty cool. You can see it's also listed down here. Gives the player a lot of options. I'm gonna step into combat here so you can see what a lot of this new stuff is. See, the long names also fit here, and I've also started using Mog Hunter's Battle HUD to kind of make more room and stuff, make things flow a certain way. And you can see now the skills have just the damage info and stuff. So it's very quick to read everything. Lots of information just doled out very quickly. Should hopefully help players parse information. And here's that new alt fire that the Tommy gun has. Gives you a nice AoE on a gun that is all about single target DPS usually. So lots of options. Another big change to combat has to do with this scanning system. You can see I have this icon that's red and yellow now for some reason. And the reason for that, I'll explain. Now, when you deal damage to a subsystem, you can see all the damage is carried over. So not only do I do bonus damage, but also if I overkill it, I'll do that damage to them as well. And the reason why it was red and yellow is because it also will take into account whether it's lethal or non-lethal and carry over that if the enemy is killed by a subsystem. So the last big point of changes is that I rearranged the intro story a little bit. This is to serve a purpose of getting the player into gameplay proper more quickly. Originally, once you got to this point where you've done your first kind of tutorial combat, you'd be sent back to the base and a bunch of more exposition happens. And I realized that this was pretty bad flow. So now you'll see as I'm going through this, I have some slightly new dialogue coming up here. Now she's talking about this before it happens later on. I'm just going to skip through it to avoid kind of spoilers and stuff. And you see I am getting the player to get their first weapon without having to go back to the base. And now, instead of being stopped, oh, this combat happens right now. So now you can see this tutorial message comes up here. And instead of being stopped from going down, I get stopped from going up to the base. So it leads you straight into being able to explore, fight some dogs, and go into the first dungeon. And the last few things are kind of just a lot of balance changes, a lot of little fixes. Probably the biggest balance change was I removed one of the attachments for the melee weapons and switched it out to something else. That item is not gone, it's just going to be removed until later in the game. It just felt like a change was needed because that attachment wasn't particularly useful at the beginning of the game. And this one should be useful pretty much throughout the whole game. And that should be it. Probably didn't seem like as much as expected for however many months it's been, but there's a lot of back-end stuff and a lot of other things going on. So hopefully a proper content update can come out soon. I'll see you guys later.